January 15th, 5:15, January 19th, 5:15, and the Carroll City Council meeting is now in session. It's budget work session night, and would you please rise with me and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, everyone's in attendance tonight. Under reports, we will begin tonight's work session, and I believe we're going to begin with the nonprofits that are here with us tonight. And I think the first one would be RSVP foster grandparent Stacy Benami. Pleasure seeing you again. Or Ben Tyker.
That's okay.
I did say, I'm sorry. I do it all the time.
That's
Thank you.
fine. No
God
problem.
bless you.
No problem. Good to see you too, Mark. Thanks for inviting me to come tonight. I appreciate it. RSVP and FGP are programs that are under the Carroll umbrella. We're operated through a federal grant. RSVP was established in Carroll County in 1974 and the foster grandparent program in 2001. We recruit people 55 years and older to volunteer at local schools, other nonprofit organizations, proprietary healthcare facilities, and government entities. Volunteers will work one-on-one with students in classrooms, daycare centers. We have a public speaking program called Speak Up. It's working with fifth graders. Volunteers go into the classroom and help students learn to prepare and deliver speeches. We have a pen pal program that's a letter exchange program with third grade. Both of those programs help schools meet some of the Iowa core benchmarks. We also have companionship and outreach programs, such as our sing-along group and volunteers that will go into local care facilities to help entertain and keep the spirits of residents up. We have days of service projects that volunteers participate in. We have our MLK Day project, which is going on right now. We have a supply drive that we help Head Start students replenish their school supplies. We have a National Service Recognition Day in the spring. We collaborate with area care facilities, and volunteers help residents get engaged in small service projects that fit their level of activity. They make bookmarks that are given to the summer reading program. They'll make bird feeders that are donated to Swan Lake and to area parks. We also have a Make a Difference Day project. It's called Blizzard Packs. We collaborate with Hy-Vee. We collect shelf-stable foods that we pack into lunches. Those are delivered to people that get home-delivered meals on a day when meals can't be delivered, when there's a blizzard, such as last Friday. They have this meal on hand that they can eat. We also have a Veterans Day project where volunteers put together cards and lapel pins, and we recognize local veterans that are living in our care facilities. And we also have a 9/11 project. We also collaborate with local nursing homes to create a bunch of goodie bags, and the volunteers fill out cards, and then we deliver those to our local emergency personnel, the police department, the sheriff's department, ambulance, fire, just to give back to some of those people. We also have volunteers that work on comfort and care items that are given to newborn infants, nap quilts for Head Start kids, hats and mittens for school-age children, walker bags and dignity bags and things like that for people living in care facilities. We also work as a referral agency to other nonprofits that might need assistance for special projects or help them fill in the gaps with their staff in their offices. Volunteering not only benefits the recipients, but it also benefits the volunteers. There's been studies that have shown people that keep their minds active and bodies active, they remain healthier longer, keeping people in their homes longer, keeping them off their services. Currently, RSVP and FGP have a combined total of 339 volunteers, with 201 of those volunteers residing and serving in Carroll. The RSVP federal grant is $122,500. FGP's is $65,543. RSVP also receives a state funding grant of $14,705. That's a combined total of $202,748. Local match is required for those grants. It's stated in the grant when you accept it. RSVP and FGP are asking for a level funding amount, RSVP $9,500, FGP $3,000. for a combined total of $12,500. This is the same amount we've been asking for since 2005. Local match from the city is pretty vital. It not only helps keep our program doors open with covering the costs of utilities, communications, supplies, but it ensures the receipt of the federal and state funding. Without any local funding and local support, the state funding would be distributed to other existing programs throughout Iowa. Federal funding would be recompeted and could potentially leave the state of Iowa altogether. Does anybody have any questions for me?
So that old competing thing hasn't gone away.
No.
Still open for.
Every 3 years, the RSVP goes open for competition. And that's why local buy-in is so important. It's not only just the funding that we receive from city, county, it's also the other supports we receive too. Be it if someone's helping us waiving some of our rent, those kinds of things. It's local buy-in. They're looking for that. These federal grants and state grants, if you don't have local community buy-in and you're not involved with your volunteers, they're going to send that money to another community that's going to have that local buy-in. And that's why funding is not only just keeping our doors open, but vital to receiving those $202,708.
Any other questions from the council for Stacy?
And you can always email me or call our office if you want more information about our programming. I can put it together for you and so that you can look at it and look through that yourself. So
I can attest they run a tight ship. Yeah. I served on that board a number of years and
you did.
I was with the county and I miss y'all, so maybe I'll see one of you.
Maybe you will. That'll be good.
That's a
Maybe.
threat, right?
No, it's a good thing. I always appreciate the support that we get from the county and the city, not only in funding, but also having someone serve on our board. It's very important. It's sometimes hard to find volunteers to serve on our board, and that support is immense.
Who serves on your board from the county anymore?
From the county, it's
I knew.
Laverne, Scott.
Yeah.
I had a momentary
I
lapse.
knew you weren't.
Yeah, Laverne is and then Scott.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions for Stacy?
Okay.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you for taking the time for
Thank
this
you.
thing.
All right, next, Rick, are you here to speak on the taxi program and the housing program?
Yes,
Okay.
which Mike told me I got two 15-minute segments, but I assure you, I probably don't need that much time. Good
Good to see you,
evening.
Rick.
I'm Rick Hunsaker. I'm the Executive Director at Region 12 Council of Governments. Here in Carroll, we are a little bit of background for those of you who are new on the council and may not be as familiar with our organization. We're a 2080 agreement between the 6 counties that we serve. So Carroll's in the center, Sac, Audubon, Greene, Guthrie, Crawford, and those counties sit on we were founded in 1973. So we are actually a government organization. The city's automatically a member by the county's paying dues. So the city doesn't pay any membership dues to the COG. Some things that you may be familiar with, our staff do grant writing and administration for a lot of communities, and we've done some of that for the city of Carroll. We do an economic development plan that is updated every 5 years. We're in the middle of updating that through the Economic Development Administration, which is federally funded. We make a lot of loans through another nonprofit corporation that we own and operate, the Region 12 Development Corporation. Just last year, putting over $2 million out on the street in the region of CARES Act funds to businesses that created jobs. We do planning, like comprehensive plans, trail plans, tax increment financing. We also do transportation planning and have funds that our board programs every year. Randy sits on that board as an advisory member to our policy council. We do various contract services, lots of technical assistance to cities. We operate the Iowa Waste Exchange. We're the fiscal agent for an 18 county region for workforce investment that we used to run that program ourselves, and now we're just the fiscal agent for that. The first program I want to talk to you about is Council of Governments Housing. For our housing programs, you might be familiar, we do rehabilitation. And of course, we've worked with the city on your rehab grants and we're the subrecipient on that. We also have down payment available, and then we have done some housing development. You might be familiar with those 2 senior duplexes that we built in Glidden. However, the Local Housing Trust Fund is what I'm here to talk to you about. That is operated by Council of Governments Housing. That is a separate nonprofit by state code or rule. It needs to be a non-governmental organization. And so half of that board is the COGS executive board and half of the board is appointed other members from our 6 counties. We are eligible now. Last year's grant was about $307,000. We have been using those funds primarily in the past for rehabilitation, and it is mostly grant funds. We help some very low income individuals under 30%. We have to come up with 25% match in order to secure that $307,000 grant. The counties and recently the state just increased funding to that program, so our grant amount has gone up. The counties all doubled their contribution to this fund. We are not requesting at this time that any of our cities contribute more. Of course, you're welcome to do that. So our request of $2,000 is level funding from last year. And for the first probably 15, 16 years, we didn't request any match from the cities, but the way the match was required, we had to start looking for different ways because we have a lot of housing programs. So we used to do cooperative rehab. They don't let us count that as match anymore. The match all has to flow through this other nonprofit. And that's when we started requesting match from the cities. So that would be level funding. I don't know if you have any questions on what we do with Council of Governments Housing funding or not. On to the next one then. See, this is going to go, I'm not going to take 30 minutes. And Mike thought I would take that long. The next is public transit. We do operate the regional public transit system for the region. And that provides, of course, general public rides. We have a lot of contract services. We're doing Medicaid waivers. We have done commuter routes. Those are the mostly white buses with big green dots on them now, though some of our old ones are still around. For many years, in fact, it probably predates me, so it's been decades that the city has partnered with Region 12 to decrease the cost of taxi tickets for elderly and handicapped individuals. We will contract with any of the cab companies in Carroll who wish to be a part of the program. We've had as many as 4 cab companies in the past. We currently have 2. Those tickets can be purchased out at Region 12, and we do sell some. The vast majority, I think, are sold here at City Hall. And then they buy those tickets discounted and then give them to cab companies for a ride. The cab companies provide them to us, and we pay them for the full fare for those. That program has been fairly popular in the past. We are down ever since COVID. We're recovering a little bit, but not sure if people just aren't getting out and about, if they have found a different way, or what the reason is that they haven't returned to using the cab companies. But we are seeing a bit of an increase since it all started, because it really dropped off from 2019 to 2020, which I know with you guys selling the tickets, you probably saw the volume go way down. Our request here is $18,000. That has been the same amount that we have requested at least for the last 5 or 6 years. I didn't look back any farther than that. I think quite a while ago, like probably 10, 20, 25 years ago, it might have been 15,000. So it hasn't gone up that much over time, but I think it has been 18,000 for a while, and that's what our request is.
It was 16,000.
Oh, 18,000 in the budget because the city sequesters some of that money to pay for staff to sell the tickets, I believe. So the fund that does go to us is $16,025. Is that right?
That's what we've paid cash in the past.
Yes.
You got 20,000 here.
Yeah. The reason that I have 20,000 in the letter is we are looking at all of our contracts because of increased costs. When we looked at this contract, there isn't a reason for us to increase it. So that's why it's level. So with good news.
Sorry, not to confuse, but Laura, the cab companies, are those not to mix the two, but if I were to call you and get cab company numbers, are those the same people? Because I have found that I can't get one of those people to answer. And I've had problems getting the other one to actually provide rides. So maybe you've seen a tick down because of that, and
I would like to know more about
I
that
did not get
after
back
this
to you
meeting.
personally, so I probably should have, but I'm just saying.
Yes,
I have
and Matt Cleveland is our transit director, so he would probably be better than I because he could follow up with those companies, but that could be why.
So,
We can also, we also provide rides in town, but we're busy, so the cab companies are helpful that they're providing, and we don't want to compete if they have the ability to provide those rides. They are doing all the ambulatory rides, of course, any of the wheelchair rides. We'd be providing those, but if they aren't answering the call, I'd like to know.
I think I talked to you one time about it, and I think there was a third person on the list, but then they just flat out didn't return any calls, so.
There is a company that I think Matt told me they are primarily doing after-hours rides, so they don't really have a reason to use this program because this clientele is generally not an after-hours clientele. So I know we used to have contracts with all of the cab companies in town. I don't know that that's the case anymore. We have 2 right now.
Right, and remember when you talked to me about that, we did do a little search, Facebook search too, of what cab company came up, and we forwarded that information onto Matt to reach out to the companies, and I think he did struggle a little bit to get some response, and so the last I knew, and it's been a few months, that the ones that we have on our list were the ones that are contracted with Region 12 to do the rides.
Emily uses one of them, and their service has been pretty respectful and been a long-time user, so see me after the meeting and
Yeah, I
we'll get you.
Yeah, I'm unaware of any issues,
She's
so
been
if there
doing
are,
that, I think.
I'd like to know.
But I know we are down just to 2, so nice to have more.
Okay, Rick, with your housing, you got $307,000 grant.
Yes.
Is this similar to like RSVP? If you don't get local money, you lose that, or?
That is correct. We have to be able to provide the match in order to they tell us how much we're eligible for. And they base that on the number of counties that are in the fund and then population. So they take those 2 formulas and 307,000 popped out last year. So 25% of that is what, 76, 77, somewhere in that neighborhood. We have to come up with that much match, which it has to be cash. We have to be able to show it going through the books in order to count it. So even though back in the day, we could do a rehab project where we might make the homeowner a loan for $5,000 and give them a grant out of the trust fund for $5,000, and that was a dollar for dollar match. That's not the case anymore unless we funnel that money through the trust fund, which is sometimes difficult to do because the grant may be USDA money that we can't do that with. So we may still do that project. We just can't count the other investment as match.
You got a lot more organizations from us to get this money.
Yes, like I said, the counties have all doubled their amount. We do, a lot of the banks around the region will provide a small contribution. And then all of our cities who are larger in population, we don't ask all cities. Some of the trust funds will do that. They'll ask for a per capita from every city, whether or not they're 50 people or 50,000 people. We looked at where we had our clientele base over the last 5 to 10 years, and those are the cities, and that's primarily the larger cities. Schleswig, Wall Lake, we don't get much smaller than that. Although if we have a little pocket of assistance, we may ask that community for assistance. And so we have quite a few cities, probably 15 to 20 out of our region, 56 cities that contribute, but we don't ask for all of them to do so.
Any other questions for Rick? Hearing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Rick.
Any questions, get a hold of me.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay, following that, we have a gentleman from the airport, I believe. Hello, Greg. Hi, Norm. Oh, yeah, it takes 2 of you.
Hi, I'm Greg Seaman, and I'm husband of Carolyn, and I've been on the Airport Commission in Carroll for about 35 or 36 years, something like that. Norm, on the other hand, is the chairman of our commission. He's been on the Airport Commission for how many years now, Norm?
I can't remember for sure. 1965, Mr. Farner signed it.
So anyway, Norm's term will come up at the end of next year. And one thing we want the council to do, and this is everybody on the Airport Commission, continue to appoint him so that he can be our chairman, because everybody in the FAA who we deal with for grants and everybody in the State Department of Transportation knows Norm. And those relationships have been very, very beneficial for Carroll. Now to get into the program tonight, you've got a copy of our budget. And are there any questions about the budget? Because I've got a different thing to talk to you about, and that's our upcoming LED project. And unless there's questions, I'll get right into the project, and because it needs some discussion. And we need to talk about where the city is at vis-a-vis the airport and the next large project that we're going to have. First of all, let me tell you that the airport is doing well. We now have, we of course, and Mr. Bordonardo, I've not met you, and I'm sorry that you weren't able to attend the orientation session, but I'm going to personally make sure that you get an orientation to the Carroll Airport, and I'd like to invite you out there sometime, and I'll show you around. How's that? Okay. Now,
There's one other thing I'd like to say. I've been around a while, as Greg says. In the state of Iowa, there are 100 airports, give or take 10 or 12 private airports. Out of that 100, there are about 9 or 10, I think, that have airlines such as United Airlines, such as Fort Dodge, Des Moines, so forth. The next segment, next classification under that is enhanced airports. Carroll is one of the enhanced airports in the state of Iowa, of which there are about 30. So that leaves about 65 that are just general aviation airports. Enhanced means that we are next in line in case something happens. A few years ago, when they had an emergency, Carroll was listed as one of the emergency airports in Iowa for Des Moines and or Omaha to use in case they needed an airport. We have the instrumentability, the lighting, full 24-hour service, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is why, not because of me or anyone else, that is why the FAA and the state deems Carroll a significant airport in Western Iowa. And we've been very fortunate in getting help when we needed large projects. So I'll let Greg take it from there.
just to give you a little history, when we started the intense promotion of the Carroll Airport back prior to 1990, Denison was the targeted airport in Western Iowa for the regional airport. And we made numerous trips down to Kansas City. We just said the only way we're going to fix this, if we let it happen, it'll happen, and Denison will end up with a big runway. But what we did is we made numerous trips and had numerous presentations with the FAA down in Kansas City, and we were able to convince them that the place to put their money and the resources for a regional airport was Carroll. And it worked real well. And as a result, we now have what Norm described, an enhanced service airport. There are only 4 of them in Western Iowa. One of them is Council Bluffs, Spencer, Ames, and Carroll. And we're on the A rating with the FAA. That's why they're interested in funding our next project, which will be conversion to LED lighting. Now, someone might ask, why didn't we do LED lighting sooner? Why didn't we do it when we constructed the crosswind runway 3-21? There was a reason why we didn't. It was simply too expensive 6 years ago when we did that project. It just cost too much to do LED lighting. It's gotten considerably cheaper now. The airport is doing very well. We now have a Cessna Citation jet based at the airport and one twin-engine Conquest Cessna airplane based at the airport, turboprop airplane. In other words, it's got jet engines with propellers. And the usage at the airport is picking up. In fact, I can tell you that if you looked at the traffic at the Carroll Airport, we would have more traffic than all the other airports around us, contiguous with Carroll County combined.
We average between, a poor month would be 450 landings a month up to 800 landings a month at the Carroll Airport. And believe it or not, I have a scanner at home that takes the airport. There was quite a bit of activity today, and it was pretty doggone cold out there, but they were still coming in and out today. So
We average approximately 2 jet aircraft landings and takeoffs a day. They're using Carroll as a base. If they have business in Denison, they come to Carroll. If they have business in Jefferson, they come to Carroll. Same with the adjoining county seat towns around us. And when they come to Carroll, they generally stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants, spend money in our community. So I think that's my phone. It's a brand new phone today. I don't know. I tried to turn it off before I came up here. I don't know how to turn it off.
It's probably the FAA.
It could be. It could be. In any event, let me talk to you about our next project, which is the LED project and how it will be funded. That project is stated cost in the documents filed with the FAA is approximately $955,000. Don't believe that number. Those numbers are about 3 to 4 years old. The FAA continues to use those engineering estimates. We think it's going to be more like $1.1 to $1.2 million. Now, federal projects are typically 90-10 projects, with 10% of the cost coming from local funds. $1.1 million would obviously be a $110,000 project. So let me give you an idea of how that's going to be funded or how it's already been funded. Okay, we had a project to rehabilitate runway 3-21, the crosswind runway out there, not the big runway, the crosswind runway, which was 3,300 feet by 60 feet wide. That project was scheduled to be approximately $383,000, with about $11,500 of the cost being ineligible for federal participation. Why was it ineligible? Because it concerned concrete around the east-west oriented T-hangars that was put in 40 years ago. They would take care of the taxiway to those hangars, but not the additional concrete. So those funds had to be paid for by the city. Now, here's how it worked. We were fortuitous in as much as this was a 2020 project. The city's share of that project would be $37,047 plus the $11,493 that was ineligible. Okay. One of the COVID programs was a total forgiveness. When we went to close that program out, the FAA notified us that that $37,047 they would pay. That money was budgeted for by the city, so that money is essentially already budgeted, $37,047 in the general fund. Additionally, we've gotten 3, and I'll call them CARES grants, although only one of them is technically a CARES grant. Not only have we got the grants, but the city has the money. The first one was for $30,000, a simple CARES grant awarded to the Carroll Airport. A second one was $13,000, which was, I call it the sanitation grant, because it was intended to keep the premises, as sterile as possible to avoid problems with coronavirus. And the third one was called the Airport Rescue Grant, because there's thinking in the federal government apparently that these airports have all suffered because of the coronavirus. And that's true, including the Carroll Airport. Thank goodness we're bouncing back as well as we are. Those three grants total $75,000. And the city has the money, again, in the general fund. Okay. Now, if you take the $75,000 plus the $37,000 is approximately $112,000 minus the ineligible portion, is the city now has $100,554 that they wouldn't otherwise have but for the airport. We'd like to talk about using that money for our LED project. And there's two other things I want to talk about. That project is set up to be a 3-year project with the FAA over 3 fiscal years, beginning in federal fiscal year 2023, which will start in October 1st of 2022 for us, with the first construction year being the summer of 2023. We feel it would save $100,000 if, instead of doing the LED conversion over a 3-year period, that we did it all at once. And plus, we would eliminate compatibility problems with different equipment used in different bids, and a whole raft of problems that we could otherwise have, including the airport being shut down 3 different times. Now, the good news is something I think you probably have not publicized this to any extent, but this new infrastructure bill that was just signed into law by the federal government, the Carroll Airport has been awarded a $159,000 grant. Now, I talked to the director of the Bureau of Aeronautics just this afternoon, not even, about an hour ago. I talked to Tim McClung, and I talked yesterday to Shane Wright, who is the project manager, and they will not know the exact disposition of that $159,000 until after April. So what I'm planning to do is that sometime after April, we're going to know where we stand with the FAA and what we could do, because I'm going to suggest that the FAA that we do that project all in 1 year. If we can, we'll push it off to the 2024 year, but we might have to start it in 2023, because the funding from the federal government comes in at $150,000 a year, and I don't want to, and it is only good for 4 years. We can bank $600,000, that's it, and I don't want that 2020 funding to drop off. So there's a dilemma. I wish I could be more specific, but they simply do not know, neither the federal FAA nor the state DOT, what that, we know we're getting $159,000 for the Carroll Airport. We don't know how, when, or if it's a 3-year deal, if it's right up front or what it is. But we'll know more, and I would certainly be able to report to you no later than March or May 1st exactly where we're at with this whole deal. Any questions about any of this?
I would like to make one statement again. For a number of years, I was on the State Board of Airports for the state of Iowa. And then in that time frame, we had meetings with the Minneapolis region, Kansas City region, Chicago region, some people from Washington DC area that were on the state Federal Aviation Board. And we were always talking about getting money, giving money. And I asked all the heads of the different departments, I said, I've told the local people from Carroll that when you give us, let's just use $1 million that we're getting now, $1 million, that doesn't come from general tax money, am I correct? Yes, you are correct. That money that you get comes from airplane passenger fees, gasoline tax for airplanes, license fees, anything that has to do with flying. In other words, if you don't fly, you don't pay. So the $1 million we get comes from basically, for lack of a better term, the flying public. So that's where we get that $1 million. It's not general tax money that comes. And that was told to me by heads of different regions in the United States.
The beauty of the whole situation is we've got a beautiful airport in Carroll. It's one of the nicest enhanced service airports in Iowa, and it's talked about. And the good thing is, for the most part, it was 90 to 95% built with somebody else's money.
Yeah.
So when they call and they call me and say, would you be interested in doing a 5,500 foot parallel taxiway for your Carroll Airport? You know what the answer is. The answer is yes. The next question, will the city support the expenditure of 10% of that money? Absolutely. Don't even have to talk to them because we've been able to work so well with the city over the years. And for the city's investment, they got 90 to 95% somebody else's money, and they got one of the nicest general aviation and enhanced service airports in Iowa. And our traffic increase speaks to that. So
one more thing about the lighting, if you just string it out in a straight string, you're gonna have roughly 5.5 miles of lighting is what you're gonna have, because you're down both sides of the main runway, the taxiway, the other way. So it's basically, it's not just a couple light bulbs here and there. We're talking about 5 straight miles of lighting.
Well, the crossway runway won't get the LED, only the.
No, it will.
Okay,
It will,
I
Mark.
thought
Here's
that's what you said.
here's a
Sorry.
project to
Okay,
split
so,
into
yeah,
3
that includes
sections.
both of them.
The first project is to do LED lighting and the runway end lights and the PAPI, Precision Approach Path Indicator
Yeah.
lights on the big runway, the 5,500 feet by 100 feet runway. And then this phase 2 will be the crosswind runway and the airport apron lights. Phase 3 will be the taxiway, the long taxiway lights. It's in 3 phases.
So the whole thing gets done.
The whole thing
that
gets
way,
done.
and
We just think
Preferably.
we could save $100,000 if we did it all in one big project. You know, same electrical bid, same equipment bid, same contractor.
And it would be done.
It's a done deal.
You know you're gonna do it, so just.
Yeah, and because we're really concerned, when you look out, inflation's running at what, 5.9 or 6.9% now?
Conservatively.
And they're talking maybe 4% next year. So we're looking at increases in cost if we don't move this thing along. And it's something we're going to have to do. You don't want to be in a position where you say we're not going to do it, because if you don't do it, the money for the crosswind runway project came from Atlantic. Atlantic didn't want to pay 10% of whatever they were doing down there. When they called, I said, yes, we'll do it. Carroll will do it. And we got the crosswind runway paved.
One other thing, the fixtures that we have out there now, some of them are up to getting close to 40 years old. And it's just like anything. It's hard to get the parts, hard to get the fixtures, hard to get the connectors for the wiring. And that's one thing, you know, if you need 4 or 5 fixtures out there, you might wait too long to get them. And the LED, everyone's putting those in now. And that's the thing to do for the city.
Well, if there are no questions, thank you very much. Laverne?
You have to shut down the airport to do the lighting.
We will have to shut it down minimally. In other words, when we talk about shutting down the airport, it won't be for any more than, like, if we did it all in one project, let's say 5 days max, because we can play with runways to a certain extent. The jets all need the big runway. But to do that work, it's unavoidable that it would have to be shut down for like 5 to maybe even 7 days. I'm not sure.
Usually one way would be open until you get to the intersection, and that would be.
And just for everyone's benefit, so what's up here now is it's showing the capital project for the airport. So this is revenue. So we're showing a revenue of $429,750 from the FAA for a grant for fiscal year 23 in the city
Well, that
budget.
would be the 2023 grant.
Yes, so that's half of the total project, at least the original FAA amount. So if you go to the next page, you see the total cost for half the project, $477,500. And then the third page would show you the expenditures. So this is a transfer from the general fund to $47,750. So what our plan is, we put half the cost in this fiscal year. And then next fiscal year, we would put the other half in is what we're planning. And it'd be general fund dollars. Now, certainly if there's other grant sources long-term we can look at, great. That's welcomed.
Yeah, I don't know where the 159 comes into play, Mike. And
Yep.
then what I don't know also is we're going to talk to the FAA about, doing this as one project. And at the point we're at with financing, I don't know whether that will require the city of Carroll for one calendar year to front money and then be reimbursed later. Now, they have said they would do that, but, we met about that.
And we've done that in the past where we
Yeah,
would
and
have
it
seen
didn't
the
look
project.
like it would work, but that's before the coronavirus money and the forgiveness of that. We're 100,000 to the good now, and that was before those things occurred. So now we're looking at a situation where we could have funds of $259,000 and will have $259,000 in funds available. So we'd like to do that all in 1 year.
And just from our budgeting standpoint, I agree, we're gonna do it in 1 year. At least that's what kind of our thought is, at least my thought is. But we're funding it over 2 years.
Yes.
So those dollars, if you don't do it till next year, great. They're sitting there for this project.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your attention. If anybody has any questions, you got, and Carolyn, did you get, Tom, a booklet? Okay. Our cell phone numbers, our emails are in there. I invite any of you to call any member of the airport commission at any time. Call me. I don't mind a bit, and I'll try to answer any questions anybody has. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your continuing support. We
Thank you for
really
your
appreciate it.
service, both of you.
Thank you.
And just because we're on airport, I'm just gonna really just recap. So what came up on page 99 of the budget book, this is the overall general budget. So this is all coming out of the general fund. Overall it shows revenues from just airport revenues and farm leases of $74,900. And you can see their various costs, maintenance, contracts with the airport support out there, expenses with the farm operation itself. So total expenses are $229,000. There is a capital outlay this year of $7,000. So total expenditures is $236,000. And so with revenues, the basically being funded by the general fund would be $161,100 in this proposed budget request from the airport.
Just so you know, our farm income, like last year, I think it was $48,000. That 45 or 48, I'm not looking at the numbers. But that money that doesn't go into the airport, that goes into the general fund, just so you know. And we do it that way because that income is variable annually. And you'll notice also one of our disappointments is that the farm expenses are going up just because the input costs for farming for the 2022 farming year beginning March 1st have really gone up, seed and hydrous and chemicals. And we crop share the main part of our farming operation. It works out better for us. And we only cash rent a very small portion, some isolated pieces. So there you have it. If you think of anything after our presentation tonight, feel free to call Norm, call myself. We welcome the calls. You got our cell phone numbers. They're in that booklet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that, because I wasn't sure how that actually worked fiscally, so. good. Step ahead. Okay, moving from the airport, we will begin discussion on Highway 30 Coalition. Adnan, welcome to familiar territory.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me tonight. Thank you for your service. This is probably the first time that the Highway 30 Coalition has formally come before the council. But I do want to thank the city of Carroll for being a member of the Highway 30 Coalition for well over a decade. And that membership really means a lot. It goes with another 50 plus other memberships from across the state. Give you a little bit of background. The Highway 30 Coalition serves all 12 counties in the state of Iowa. It has been around for approximately 30 years. It was led by a gal named Edith Pfeffer from Clinton County for many, many years. And I took over as the president of the coalition approximately 8 years ago. I've been a member of the coalition for about 12 years. And the coalition's duty and task is the promotion of completing Highway 30 as a 4-lane corridor across the state. And if anybody gets out and travels Highway 30 right now, we really haven't seen much in the way of development on our side of the state. Some of that is by design and unfortunate, but it is kind of what it is. From Clinton to DeWitt, Iowa, there's a 4-lane road. And then from Lisbon, Iowa, all the way to Ogden is either 4-laned or in various stages of construction right now. So Mountain Vernon is a community that a bypass was built not too long ago, and that opened up not too long ago. As you move over into Benton County and head towards Lisbon, you'll see a lot of construction going on right there. And at this time, that is scheduled to be done in approximately 2025. We have been a big driver behind promoting the 4-lane development over the years. And what we kind of were told by the DOT over all these years through guidance is that you just kind of you start at Marshalltown, Ames area, and you just keep working that thing to the Mississippi. And then we'll start at Ogden and we'll work our way back west. The Highway 30 Coalition has been, for the last 20 some years, supporting the completion of Highway 20 as well, because we were told that once 20 was complete, more attention would be able to be paid towards Highway 30. And Highway 20 was a pretty big legislative agenda for the last 35 years. And lo and behold, in 2018, they cut the ribbon on Highway 20, and it was complete. That was not without some additional funding that came through in the form of a 10-cent gas tax increase for the state of Iowa, and also some back and forth legislative votes from the western side of the state. So now that Highway 20 is complete, Highway 30 has been continuing our promotion for 4-lane development. About 7 years ago in Shenandoah, the DOT had a public input meeting, and approximately 25 to 30 of our members attended that public input. And we were able to get the DOT at that time to vote favorably on 3 priorities for Highway 30. Our request at the time was that they complete Lisbon to DeWitt, Iowa, which is a 40-mile segment as 4-lane. and then they would complete Ogden to Carroll, which is approximately 40 miles. And then they would also assist Missouri Valley with flood mitigation and a 4-lane bypass of their community. And they voted favorably for that. Unfortunately, what we find with priorities is that there really isn't any funding. There really isn't a calendar stating when it's going to be complete. And we all have to just kind of remain patient and diligent with the DOT and trying to keep ourselves in front of them. So as a coalition president and as a volunteer member, I've traveled the state for the last 8 years and attended all 4 of the public input meetings that the DOT puts on throughout the state. We do PowerPoint presentations, and early on, we were advised by Shirley and some of the volunteers who worked on 20 for the last 34 years, as well as the IEDA, Debbie Durham, and others, that we should really make sure that we were making a strong economic case for Highway 30, because oftentimes from a DOT and a planning perspective, they're really just interested in traffic counts, crashes, and things of that nature. Because a lot of Highway 30 is in rural areas of the state, you're not going to see the traffic counts like you're going to see around Des Moines or major metros. And so we really have built an economic case over the years. Just a couple fun facts for you folks, and you can look this up on our website and our many PowerPoint presentations as well. But Highway 30, as far as a corridor in the state of Iowa right now, has the second most population, traffic count, number of businesses, and I would say economic impact, if you will, when you look at agricultural manufacturing, distribution, and all of the different segments we cover, than any other corridor in the state of Iowa, behind only Interstate 80. So you compare us to 20, 69, 34, 2, 61, you name it. Highway 30 has more of an economic, traffic populated impact in the state. We've got over 558,000 souls that live in communities along Highway 30. So with that, and in order to continue to build this economic case, we have commissioned a company who assisted Highway 20. The company is called Schneider and Associates, and before you have a memorandum from them, this is a request we worked on with them, and we thought the timing would be very good because the latest census numbers are out, and we've got a lot more data than we typically would just because we've come into the turn of another decade. And so these guys worked with 20 on a similar study, and then basically just studying all aspects of Highway 30 across the state and how it truly does impact the state. You know, the information that I had to put together for my presentations, I used a lot of help from the Region 12 COG. I used Iowa Corn Growers and Iowa Soybean Association members and Cattlemen's Association and Iowa Pork to put together agricultural economic forecasts and information for the DOT. But this company, as an engineering firm, has worked with the DOT. They also are able to then put that transportation spin, talking about how traffic enters the corridor, what reason it's there for, how it exits, really looking at all of the impact it has to any county in general. Because, you know, as Carroll grows from 10,000 people to 18 and change every single day, we know those people are coming here for work and for services and what have you. You have to track where all of that comes from. Also, the state puts weight limits on what you can send up and down the interstate. And while you can sometimes get some exemptions with respect to grain hauling and cattle hauling and hog hauling, the predominant amount of that type of agricultural transportation occurs on state roads like Highway 30 and not the interstates. And that's truly by design because it's also closest to where everything is taking place. So with that, the Highway 30 Coalition is requesting that the City of Carroll would assist us with a contribution of $5,000 to this study. I have met with the Carroll County Board of Supervisors and requested $5,000 from the county. I've also met with the CADC, Carroll Economic Development Corporation, and requested 5. I then am meeting with the Cedar County Board of Supervisors on the 25th of this month, the City of Jefferson on the 8th, the City of Denison Supervisors and City Council on February 15th. The Greene County Economic Development Corporation, I actually had one meeting with them already, and I have a follow-up meeting with them on February 2nd. And then the Greene County Supervisors is February 3rd. I've also got 2 counterparts that are members of the DOT or of the Highway 30 Coalition that reside in Clinton County. One of them is Tom Detterman, who's the County Board of Supervisors there. He's already putting forward his request. He's also working with the mayor on the request from the city of Clinton. They're working their angle for the economic development group of Clinton. Don Smith is the County Board of Supervisors who's lined up my meeting for Cedar County. We'll be respectfully requesting meetings with the city, major city of Cedar County, as well as their economic development group. With what that all means is that if I'm able to successfully get 5,000 from each of those entities in these 4 major counties that our priorities take place in, we would have approximately $60,000. The Highway 30 Coalition then has, through its memberships, aggressively over the last 8 years, we've been able to raise about $22,000 now as a volunteer organization. So I've got about $15,000 to $20,000 that we can commit to the study. And then we're going to be reaching out to some of our major business partners like ADM and Landis and a number of others along the corridor who have written support letters to legislators, both federally and statewide, for us over the years as well. And so I'm quite confident that this plan should come together and we should be able to fully fund this study in this way. And so timing wise, now is the time for me to be in front of as many cities and counties and what have yous, because I know it's budget time and this is when you guys are trying to make your decisions. So with that, the only other meeting that we do have lined up, and this just came about 45 minutes ago, is we will be going down and speaking to the House Transportation Committee at the State House on Tuesday. And Representative Brian Best reached out to me about 45 minutes before tonight's meeting and is lining that up. So that's really not necessarily a funding ask. We're also having to put before the Transportation Committee some rather large concerns that we have right now about the way in which the DOT is approaching the Lisbon to DeWitt section. They are really actively right now promoting a Super 2 development, similar to what you see between Carroll and Denison, as opposed to a 4-lane, which to us, and at the advice of the Economic Development Authority for the state of Iowa, makes absolutely no sense and is a tremendous waste of taxpayer dollars, because you've now developed 4-lane all the way to Lisbon. You're going to drop back down to 2-lane for 40 miles. And then you're going to go back out to 4-lane to Clinton. Clinton has 2 of our biggest docks for the Mississippi River, and some of the most product in the entire state of Iowa moves up and down the Mississippi through the Clinton barge port there, transport port there. So for a company like ADM, who's invested several billions of dollars in Cedar Rapids and in Clinton in the Mississippi River, it's kind of a slap in the face to not finish that 40-mile section so that they can quit sending their trucks down 380 across 80 and back up to Clinton, which is a transportation nightmare. And it only compounds the issues you continue to hear about with traffic on Interstate 80. So we're having some rather strong dialogues right now to stop that 2-lane development. And right now it's in the DOT's budget for years 25, 26 to start development there. So now is the time for us to continue to come with good economic data and a strong case to stop that. Because the other thing that concerns us is that if they go Super 2 there, the chances for us to ever get 4-lane development west is much, much less. So that is where we're at. Any questions for me on this?
Is this a one-time asking?
Yes, sir. Yep. And you won't actually have to cut the check if we are not successful in going forward with the study.
That was my second. Thank you.
You
knew
will
where
not-
I was going.
You will not get any
If
funding
other
requests. unless we go.
stakeholders don't go in, you've got to come up with $60,000 from your stakeholders.
Yep.
And if you're unsuccessful in that, it deals off.
Correct. But it does send a strong message, having this number of entities
sorry.
and these
Sorry.
counties. I think it sends a really strong and positive message to not only the DOT, but the state as a whole, when we're able to get these kinds of funds pulled together from this number of entities. I think it really says a lot. And it also shows that we have a local buy-in and a local dog in this fight, that we want to see this happen for our region and for our communities.
Adam,
Yeah.
how long, if you, it sounds like you'll probably be successful because there hasn't been a study in so long, but how long would it take Schneider and Associates to complete the study and get the report ready? What's their timeline, are they thinking?
They're thinking probably about 8 months from start to finish, because there's a lot that they're going to be diving into. And we're, as a coalition, going to also be able to get reports from them and continue to kind of drive that dialogue as well. So because they're studying other corridors to do comparisons. They're doing some of that back and forth on what Super 2 means versus Super 4, or I mean a 4-lane road versus a Super 2, and how that impacts communities. Also, another fun fact, you hear from our economic development group that we really want to try to get a certified economic development site. But site selectors will not accept applications from businesses that are not in 4-lane road development.
But this is only for 4-laning it.
That's correct, yes.
2 options, bypass or alignment.
It is,
With-
right now, we've been currently promoting the idea that we would be just fine with running the road from Carroll to Glidden, necking it down as you saw up on Highway 20 in Mobile and Correctionville. That is the rural 4 concept that we've been promoting. It does not have to be a bypass. As I noted with Missouri Valley, they actually were requesting a bypass because 970 trucks are driving through their downtown, and their setbacks are so shallow that it's shaking their buildings into the ground and their foundations are falling out from underneath them. So every community, of course, will be unique.
Do you know, I've been following, I always look at their the DOT's 5-year reports to look at like airports, trails, who's getting the grants, et cetera. And they have their 2022, it's all online, it's really good, 2022 to 2026 plan. I just am curious about that, the bypass by Missouri Valley, that, do you have any idea how long that was in the pipeline with the DOT? Because that seemed to come up really fast, and now they mentioned in their report on page 45, the portions of US 30 they're going to work on, one is Missouri Valley. Did it take them long to get in the pipeline? I'm just curious how long, if this is successful, how long it would take your group to get into their pipeline, because their funding is, I mean, they have a hard time getting federal money to get siphoned down to the state.
Sure. We were hardcore doing our request with them to help Missouri Valley at just the right time.
So
With the floods that occurred and the fact that they needed to do levee work, and they were going to try to do some type of a joint effort with the Army Corps of Engineers. That's why that project accelerated as quickly as it did and got into 25 and 26, because it was that joint federal money with the Army Corps. It was 2 floods within a decade's time.
It was a unique situation.
It was, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And they have purchased all of the right-of-way for the 4-lane bypass. At this time, what I'm being told is the intent is going to be to pave it too. But that's, we're going to see how that goes too, because we have some communication with Blair, Nebraska, and some others that we would just assume see it done as 4, and then continue our efforts working with the state of Nebraska on promoting 4-lane all the way to Blair, because that would be a huge thing for our agricultural.
Well, we're the
Inter-
Lincoln Highway. It was the first transcontinental highway
Yep.
in America.
Iowa's Main Street is what some of the postcards used to say.
It's great.
Yeah.
What's your due date that you need from us to know?
I'm remaining patient. I know everybody's in budget, so I've kind of just committed I figured by most budget certifications will be the end of March. So by April, I can get back to Schneider, and then if we've got most of our funding and everything's ready to go, then we can give them the green light. And, I'd say by October of next year, before we get into the next legislative session, we'll be armed with another new study to promote.
Speaking of bypasses, and this is way too early to probably even talk about it, but give me a 30-second thumbnail sketch. What are you hearing, if this would ever come into fruition, about a bypass around Carroll? Years ago, probably back in 1995, it was out by Schickelberg's and then on around Noble Avenue and so on. Is there any underlying concern out there that could happen to Carroll?
No, I think it kind of got shut down. That's probably one of the reasons why we actually took a back seat. I would say there was some legislation or some back and forth local decisions that created that Super 2 between Carroll and Denison, because early on they had planned to build that as 4-lane. And there was some people, that didn't want it, and they were in the right positions at the right time, or they knew the right policymakers, and they put that to bed, and they just built a Super 2 and shut that road down for 2.5 years. And at the end, we got nothing out of it. We got no economic impact. We got no better speeds. We got really no safety. We got literally almost no passing lanes. We don't even know why they did it. So that's why we're really concerned about that Lisbon to DeWitt. From a bypass perspective, we've seen everything work quite well up in Mobile and Correctionville. And so we feel very confident that why can't you just run the 4-lane, neck it down to a 2, go through the community at a reasonable rate of speed, go back out to 4, and use the existing right-of-way? Because then we don't have overpasses that we're building. We don't have off-ramps that we're building. It reduces the farm ag ground impact. So, and then from there, and I've seen this done in Dodge City, Kansas, from there, if the community doesn't want the road 20 years from now running through their community, they can request from the DOT to put a truck route around the community. So you see that done as well. So I'm taking it from that perspective. I feel like we found a lot of common ground as we visit with communities that don't want to be bypassed. We're visiting with the agriculture and the farm bureaus of the world who don't want as much of a farm ground impact. And we're really just trying to meet everybody in the middle with that. Our real only goal is to get 4-lane development funded and built. We're not engineers, and I don't pretend to be. And how it gets built, that needs to be a local decision in joint effort with the DOT. I let them design it and figure that out. But the biggest thing that we're concerned about is getting the road built. So we've got safer traffic, we've got better commerce, and we've got better economic opportunity. Iowa Workforce Development states that employees will travel 25 miles further on a 4-lane road than they will on a 2. And when our unemployment continues to hover 1.8 to 2%, and we're struggling to get people here, sure would be nice if some people would be able to commute a little safer here and might take a look at some of our jobs. So all of these things are factors, and transportation is just a huge thing. And I think sometimes it seems so big that people don't want to try to take it on, but I continue to say it's probably the number one thing we need to be looking at as a community in rural Iowa right now.
Well, Adam, you're a tomcat. God bless you for your work on this. I know you've been at it a good long time. I was telling Mike earlier today. Tony Borston was on the foundation. Did you remember Tony? Jerry's
a long,
dad.
long time.
Jerry's
I know
dad.
Jerry.
Yeah, and he was kind of on the ground floor of this way back in the day, and you've done yeoman's work. So God bless you, and thank you for keeping Carroll first.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time tonight. Good night.
And I would note, we do have $5,000 included in the budget right now, so it's presented to you.
As local option sales tax
Yep.
money.
Thanks again. Okay, we are, I think, completed. Get back to my paperwork. I think we're completed with some of the outside agencies. We're now at Public Works. Do you want to break now? What's your thoughts?
How long do you think your discussion is going to take, Randy?
How long?
Yeah.
I guess it could go any length of time you desire. As short or as long as you want.
He was asking if it was up to you.
I would say let's break quick and get that out of the way, and then we'll go from there.
There was your chance, Randy. Okay, shall we go ahead then? Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Public Works portion of the city operation is funded in this budget in a few different funds. General fund contains some, road use tax fund, capital projects, water utility, sewer utility, stormwater utility. So diving right into the general fund to begin with, the budget cover sheet is on tab E, page 45, beginning on at that point. Also, the line item detail for the public works portion of the general fund is included in tab G, tab J, and tab L. So it's kind of spread out. But the cover sheet is a kind of an aggregation of the areas of the general fund that are under public works. They include street construction, road maintenance, street lighting, traffic services, public works administration, city garage, central business district, and then a transfer in the streets fund. And briefly, commenting on each one, the street construction portion of the budget is pretty much limited to a $5,000 expenditure. And that expenditure is actually identified for sidewalks, but what it's been spent on is the purchase of detectable warning panels. We purchase detectable warning panels by the pallet, and then the sidewalks or the ped ramps that the city employees build, they use those panels. Also, those panels are sold to contractors that build sidewalks. It's much easier for them to get them from us than it is to try to go out and find them in the market. So we sell them for cost. So it's worked out pretty well that way in advancing kind of the ped ramp construction. The road maintenance portion of the budget, of course, this is general fund. It supports the road work that would customarily not be eligible for road use tax expenditure. Most road work is. There's some work that our street maintenance personnel do that probably isn't, like putting up Christmas decorations, miscellaneous things like that. So that's funded from this portion of the general fund. Street lighting, of course, is that is the rental cost of the street lighting around town, with the exception of the central business district. The street lights around town are owned by Mid-American Energy, and the city pays a tariff on each light each month. And there are about 800 lights currently, and an estimated cost next year of $170,000. Public Works Administration is just the general fund support for three of us here in City Hall. About 30% of our salary costs are charged to the general fund. City garage, of course, that's the operation of the maintenance garage. We factored into this budget some additional cost that we anticipate with the new street maintenance facility being occupied. Also included in that portion of the budget are a couple of capital items. One is a wheel lift system. These are both for the street maintenance facility, the newer facility, and then an air compressor. Central Business District funds the, I guess, maintenance and operation of the streetscape area here in the downtown area. It's predominantly it's electrical costs for streetlights. Currently, there are approximately 550 streetlights that are owned by the city, and the cost to operate them is actually electrical usage cost that's metered. Stepping back to those lights that Mid-American owns, each light has a tariff, a monthly tariff that's paid. So the city does not pay a metered electrical cost for those lights. course, that tariff would include the electrical consumption plus the depreciation of the light and everything else. So, but the CBD lights, these black street lights, they are owned by the city, maintained by the city, and they are all metered.
And how many were those again, Randy? I'm sorry.
There's 556 actually.
556 of those, of the black.
Yep.
Kind of the corridor ones? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
550.
Mm-hmm. And then the last area,
Can I interject real quick too? Because the interesting comment that just come up recently about streetlights from Mark, about citizen request about streetlights and adding some. You know, we have a policy about it, but long story short, not every streetlight you see out there, you would think that's a city-owned streetlight. In fact, we've had residents they put up streetlights and pay Mid-Am directly for those costs. So there are some of those out there just to be aware. So if a resident wants to have a streetlight and doesn't follow our policy, they can elect to have their own streetlight put in by Mid-Am.
And just to clarify, I raised the question by citizen request.
sure. Mhm. Okay. The last area of the budget is streets transfer, and that's a $50,000 transfer that's targeted for the sidewalk transition plan. There is a requirement, and the city has fulfilled it, at least to prepare a plan and schedule the phasing in of pedestrian curb ramps. And this is a $50,000 annual contribution to that effort for ped ramps. The revenue portion of the general fund public works areas is relatively minor. The expenditures, capital outlay, I did mention the $5,000 of detectable warning panels, the air compressor and the wheel lift system is what's proposed there. And then the transfer at $50,000. So there is just over a $500,000 support for the public works portion of the city operation from the general fund. Are there any questions on the general fund portion of the budget? Okay, if not, the next section is the road use tax fund. The budget cover sheet begins on tab E, page 71. And the line item detail is tab O, page 163. Of course, the road use tax is kind of a restricted fund. Its expenditure eligibility is dictated by the state. And of course, the state does credit the city road use tax funds. The state collects funding from registrations, fuel tax, excise tax on auto rental, and use tax on purchase to fund the road use tax fund. Then that's further allocated or broken down among the state primary road fund. The counties have both a secondary road fund and a farm to market fund, and then the city street fund, which is about 25% of the revenue in the road use tax, the state road use tax. And then from there, it's distributed to cities based on a per capita basis. And for the next fiscal year, the estimated per capita distribution is $126.50. So every person counts in road use tax. That is the majority. I'll step back. Within the road use tax fund, it's broken down to road maintenance, snow removal, street cleaning, administration, and transfers. What we would like to see are the 2023 initiatives that are included in this budget that are partially funded from the road use tax fund. are the Adams Street Reconstruction Project and the Street Restoration Project. I already mentioned the revenue, the primary revenue. Also within the revenue of the road use tax is a transfer from the Employee Benefit Special Revenue Fund. And that's in the amount of $165,174. That is actually support from that fund to the road use tax fund. So the road use tax money would be eligible for that expense, but in order to retain some of that funding for capital maintenance or capital construction, it's also eligible for support from the Employee Benefit Special Revenue Fund. Within the expenditures, the personnel services remain at 7.9 full-time equivalents, which it has been for some time. Capital outlay, we're proposing the purchase of a pavement mill, a grinder that fits on a skid loader, basically, at $25,000. And then the transfers that are identified at $200,000, that's $100,000 each to the Capital Projects Fund for the Adams Street Reconstruction and the street resurfacing projects. And other than that, the fund balance estimated at the end of the fiscal year is $2,786,778. We've listed the full-time equivalent personnel in the road use tax fund. And then, of course, the capital request is the pavement mill. Are there any questions on the road use tax part of the budget? If not, we can continue on. Just briefly, as we're going through the budget book, a stop at the tab Q, local option sales tax. There is one expenditure item that's related to Public Works in that on page 176. It's miscellaneous contract work in the amount of $20,150. And that is the Bolton and Mink Inc. fee for the quiet zone study. That you've had the presentation on it. That quiet zone study will be finalized here in the near future, be brought back to you. There have been some other questions arise surrounding it. Those questions will come up to you, and we've tried to put dollar amounts to answering those questions, and they'll all be presented at the time the final report is presented.
That's already in process, right? Quiet zone studies. That was
Yeah, the study is.
22 action.
Yeah, the study is practically completed. The presentation was made on the preliminary study. The presentation was made by Bolton and Mink.
Yeah.
And they took back some questions from you and incorporated those into the final study, along with looking into a few other questions that came up following that presentation. So we're proposing that it come back to you in final form as a presentation, and then whatever action you desire from there.
You have an estimated time for that?
We do, on the completion of the report, it had been estimated at about a couple of weeks to complete. As far as a meeting for you, that's entirely up to you. You're going to be meeting to death this month, so whatever you desire.
It would be ready as soon as within the next couple of weeks.
That's what they've indicated, yes. Mm-hmm.
I would note, we don't have anything in the budget right now related to the quiet zone.
Okay.
So, from that perspective, there's no urgency unless you want to add stuff to the budget at this point.
Any questions on that? Anybody? Thank you, Randy.
You bet. Next area of the budget is capital projects. That cover sheet is on tab E, page 74. The detail, line item detail is under tab U, beginning on page 224. Within this portion of the budget, the capital projects, there are three areas: streets, corridor of commerce, and the street maintenance facility. The initiatives for 2023 parallel the road use tax, Adams Street Reconstruction, the street restoration 22 project, and then there is included funding in this budget for a Pleasant Ridge Road Timberline sidewalk design. That funding is included in the amount of $15,000, I believe. Actually, as a point of explanation, the Adams Street Reconstruction project, of course, we're all familiar with that. And then there was the authorization to move forward with the street resurfacing project for 2022. Now, the intent was then and is now that one of the two of those projects would be constructed. You know, certainly the Adams Street one was the initial highest priority. Depending on the development of it, and a lot of questions to be answered yet, will determine where that schedule ends up for that project. The street restoration project was proposed, and it's practically finally designed and ready to go. In the event that Adams Street does not get let in 2022, that the restoration project can be let in 2022. That way you're not losing a year of street repair or street capital maintenance. You're ready to go either way. So that decision will come as the Adams Street project moves forward.
Randy, can you remind me what location that is?
Adams Street?
I mean, if Adams isn't done, what's the?
Oh, the locations of the street restoration? I can. A portion of Randall Road between West Street and Todd Terrace. Main Street from 13th to Randall Road. And now I have to look. People Lane between Anthony and Main, and 21st Street between West and Main. And that's full depth concrete patching is what this restoration project is. Okay, the revenue in that streets portion of the capital projects comes from a variety of sources, geo bonding, some general fund, road use tax, local option sales tax, and then the electric franchise fees. This is the first year that electric franchise fee has been allocated. We have 200,000, I believe, allocated to street projects in this budget. Capital outlay, what the expenditures are planned to be. First of all, for we did include in here that $50,000 sidewalk transition plan expenditure. The Adams Street reconstruction expenditure is included in this budget, as well as the street restoration expenditure. So both are included. The intent is to do one. That's the way it's set up. And then the $15,000 in design work for that Pleasant Ridge Road to Timberline sidewalk. That was a new priority of your priority, I guess, council priorities.
Can I ask a question about that now? I don't know if now's the time or the place, but I have had several people reach out to me saying they don't want that. So is now the time to talk about that? Okay, because
So,
I
and I think there's kind of two different components I think you have to think about the project. There's a section of Timberline where we did a portion of it this year. And then I think there's the portion of Pleasant Ridge. Now I've heard from people on both streets. So the question I'd ask is, you know, Pleasant Ridge or Pleasant Ridge in particular, you know, I've had residents call that want it. And we certainly have had Timberline residents who don't want it there. So, you know, I think one of the questions is direction is there, do you want to do any portion of it? Do you want to do none of it? I guess we need a little direction on where you want to go. I know in particular, you know, we've had residents that are on Pleasant Ridge in particular that are, you know, it's their property. It's like, you know, I'm seeing, you know, parents with strollers out in the street with semis going by on that road. So I guess I just staff needs direction on where you want to go.
Ridge runs by your place.
I'm on that street. I've been taking photographs of the huge semis.
Yeah, no,
Everything. And I will tell you, there are people who don't live, we all received the emails from a couple families that live right, you know, to the west of the Hawkups where the path started, the sidewalk. And there's been some misconception like, well, is it going to be a recreation trail or a sidewalk? I'm explaining sidewalk. You get past the 5 houses on that block, and there are people that live in that very dense residential area that have kids, and there are people that are walking their dogs, etc. They're the ones that would really appreciate it because that street is a feeder for their kids to get to Rolling Hills Park and then to take the link to the Sauk Rail Trail. So I get it that some people, you know, don't want a sidewalk. They aren't used to it. Those homes were built several decades before all that development happened to the west. But people who live down there, that's their main thoroughfare for their kids to bike, to walk their dogs. And the other day I saw 2 big German Shepherds just flying down Timberline Road heading for the park. So I get it, the people who live there, they'd like to leave things the way it is, but then you have people who want to navigate that area and feel safe. So it's
the people
really,
I've heard from are the people on Timberline.
right, but I mean, Timberline goes past that block that we're talking about, and the people that live farther west of that block want a sidewalk there so they and their kids or whomever, pedestrians and kids on bikes can get down to Rolling Hills Park, you know, continue on that block where some of the people do not want the sidewalk. So they want a sidewalk there. And so I think there's a conflict between the homeowners on that one block on Timberline and the people who live west of that block.
I'm not 100% sure of the whole route we're taking. West side of the road, east side of the road, north side. I've never seen a map of what we're actually proposing here. I don't know what you're connecting to. I've never seen it. I don't know exactly where the sidewalks you're talking about. I know the streets. Huh?
I think I'm a little bit of agreement with you.
Yeah. Are we connecting from where we stopped this summer and moving on, or I've never seen the map, so I don't know.
The trail comes up where we stopped on Main Street.
I don't know.
There's nothing that goes up and then goes down the big hill and then where it ends.
And then how
by
far on your street or Carroll Street are we going? I've never been presented this, so I can't answer or say much about it, so.
Would you
It would
pull
And I probably
me up?
said the wrong thing. The people that I've heard from are the people
Right.
connecting where we ended just recently by the curve. The people there I've talked to don't want a sidewalk in front of their home up to the corner.
Right, they're the ones who sent us the email, and I get that, but people farther along as Timberline continues to the west, where all the new houses have been built, they're the ones who would appreciate the sidewalk.
All right, what do we got?
So this is what I would, I guess, how I interpret the goal. So we brought the sidewalk this year up to approximately right here to the driveway of this property. It would be to continue it on the south side of Timberline to Hidden Valley, bring it south along Hidden Valley to Pleasant Ridge, and then Pleasant Ridge to an existing sidewalk here. You also likely need a sidewalk connection from this point to Timberline across Hidden Valley, because then you get into the Rolling Hills area, which does have sidewalks. And again, trying to get down to Rolling Hills Park, I believe, is what Carolyn alluded to.
So what people are you talking about, Carolyn, that want it? Where's their
Well, you see
location?
where all the houses are to the west, there are people
That area?
there that would appreciate,
So what do they want?
sidewalk to continue to the west from the
They want to
Hawkeye.
connect that
Yeah,
to,
people really love this and the continuation of the
okay,
sidewalk.
so that's what they want.
But
Alright.
I'll
So
tell
there's no sidewalk from Hidden
There's-
Valley to Prairie View Drive
No,
either.
there's no sidewalk all along here, on either side, and I will tell you, other people brought up to me that parking is allowed on both sides of the street on Timberline. This is going off in a tangent, something else, and that gets really crowded, and the visibility is bad. I will tell you, our Pleasant Ridge Road, the sidewalk ends on our property line, and right to the west of us is Matt Gredman bought his parents' home, and then there's no sidewalk, and that definitely needs to be done. You know, probably if we started somewhere, we are the bypass for trucks who want to bypass the 1 mile length of the
Oh, yeah,
highway.
there's
30
truck traffic
corridor.
on there.
I've never seen it so bad. We've lived there since '93. And a huge truck that are using their bikes, they have the little electric scooters and so on. So it's a safety issue. We need to start somewhere on these streets because of the dense population, both to the west, and then we have all that growth to the south of me, south and to the southeast, and all of that down by McFarland. Because kids want to get to Rolling Hills Park, and adults, and also access the Sauk Rail Trail. So we're in the Timberline Road has become a feeder street from all those small houses to the west. There's an outlet way to the west, Ely or Eli Street, but people they're using Timberline Road to access Main Street and just continue on that way. It's become a arterial street. I'm on it all the time. And
So where's the resistance coming from? What residents?
On Timberline,
It's
right?
these
On
residents
Timberline.
here.
Yeah.
right,
Okay,
there
all the
are
way, the whole Timberline Road?
well, there are 5 houses
Okay.
west of Hawkeye.
And I know we were in this building, so it would have been the fall of 2019. You know, we had a neighbor and a lot of discussion, and we had heard it was initiative of a former council member because their neighborhood had been really pushing to have sidewalks. So we brought a neighborhood meeting, and I know through that discussion, the neighborhood really did not want a sidewalk. I mean, it was heard.
Street?
Yep, both sides. And what I would say is, no one wanted it on their side of the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was, a lot of discussion, and the compromise at that point was we needed to do something to get it around this curve. This gentleman, Hawkup,
Nelson.
Yep.
Nelson is there.
was, let's bring it to my property at least. That's a compromise. And so is what has been done.
Well, the 5 houses that are going from Hawkups on the curve to Hidden Valley, they're the ones who don't want their property, on their grass and so on, or I've had to practically stop my car and wait for people that are walking their dogs on Timberline by these houses because they fill a whole lane and you can't pass because the curb's coming up. And, it's just used for so many recreational uses.
Randy, is there a study out there that requires sidewalks or so by amount of traffic? Is there some guidelines we have to follow on that?
No, sidewalks they're completely your discretion.
Okay.
This might sound like a silly question, but I'm just gonna ask it. So I feel some of the pushback is probably, number one, they don't want their property disturbed. Number two, they don't want to clean a sidewalk, which who doesn't? But in the event that it's, a busy arterial road and we've already done up to the curb because we thought it was a safety issue, is there any way to bring it further so that it's more like a trail and that we have to take care of it? I know we don't always have the manpower to do so, but can you take over their ground and do that?
It's not their ground. The sidewalk would be in the city right away.
It's our right of way, but I meant,
And they
I'm
know
just-
that. It's,
right,
it would be built in the city right away.
but they still have to maintain it.
Yeah,
They don't
that
really want
is
to do
in
that.
right, Misty, that is in our ordinance that for liability purposes, Dave had us add that they have to maintain it. Yes, you're right.
So even if you made it a larger trail sidewalk, these are probably silly questions, but like if you made it a larger, are we then responsible if it's more of
To
an art?
clear it, you mean?
Yeah. I'm just asking the
Yeah,
question.
no, that's a good question.
I think in theory, the city could take the liability and cleaning of any sidewalk, but then the question becomes, where do you stop
I
on
know.
that?
I think that's the question you ask this whole thing, is where do you start and stop on sidewalks in the whole city? If that's not just the only road that doesn't have a sidewalk.
Absolutely.
There's plenty.
So in the policies, new development, one side of the road has to have a sidewalk.
Correct.
Under the new policy, yeah.
And historically in the city, kind of the urban core, I would call it, we required sidewalks on both sides. We went through a period of time that we did not require sidewalks on either side. And this would be one of those that during that time. And then we went through a period of time now that we're in that we required on one side. And it switched sides at different times, correct, Randy?
Yeah, sometimes the physical barriers require it to be placed on one side or another.
There is, and I asked Mike, I didn't know there is no ordinance, but gave me procedure in our policies and procedure manual. And Misty kind of triggered the thought here. In it, Roman numeral 2, it says install a sidewalk along one side of previously constructed arterial and collector street. This is a previously constructed street. It's not a new development, and it leaves it open, I think, which is a good thing. An inventory shall be taken listing the action, and just see what's practical or not, excuse me. And the staff shall establish priorities and recommend action to be taken based on previously constructed or arterial or collector street. It's definitely become that, which is, I get it. It's really changed the feel of their block. But because it is on a collector arterial street. It's changed, it's presenting us with this dilemma.
So the question for us tonight is, do we want to put the $15,000 in the budget for the study? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's the question, but I don't want to put it in there if we're not gonna do it.
Well, we can put it in, but we don't have to use it. We could discuss this at another time.
Yeah, I would just suggest that, because it wasn't an agenda item, that I appreciate the dialogue and the discussion about it right now. And now that it's out there that we're talking about it again is a good thing. But before we really take an action on it, and well before we're done with our budget workshops, I think we need to make a decision on it. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so.
I'm real good not making a decision on it tonight, and for Randy's benefit, would say, keep it in pencil. But I think at one of the upcoming city council meetings or budget workshops, then at that point we make, and then that way we can have proper alert for those property owners and people that are interested on both sides could come before the council and air their voice.
So you're saying to talk about it, to determine if we want to have the study done,
Correct.
not to do it.
To even, well, it wouldn't, if we're not going to do it, it wouldn't make any sense to
Right,
put
but
the
if we-
study in. So I mean.
Go ahead.
It's design
Design.
services.
It's a design
design.
service, sorry.
Yeah, it's
It's
design.
design services.
Yeah.
So we take the $15,000 out if we're not going to do it.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody? Pretty much in agreement for now, at least?
And I think there's a couple questions, at least from staff's perspective, we'd need direction from is, because I think there's do nothing, there's do part, there's do all. So I think there's even some questions of, do you parse it? And I don't know if there's a design cost difference between if we did, for example, if we did Pleasant Ridge, is there a lesser cost for design, or is the 15,000 pretty much standard?
They would probably be lesser length, lesser survey. Mhm.
The objective is for that new development to be able to use that sidewalk and timberline. I feel like in that study, you should have something from Hidden Valley to Prairie View as well, connecting that. Otherwise, you're not gaining anything besides that U on Timberline, Hidden Valley.
I agree with that.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's something that would be extended in
Yeah.
the study.
I don't know, I think getting the big picture is a good thing with this study. And then, once we get the big picture, then decide if we want to shrink it down to a specific area or extend it, as Kyle said. But that's just how I think. I like to have the big picture and then let's analyze what's going on and see where we go.
And to be clear, this isn't really a study that we're undertaking. This is doing design
Design
on
service.
what the sidewalk would, how it would be
How it
constructed,
would be right.
what the elevations are, how much grading would have to occur.
Get that.
And some sense of
It's just-
cost.
It doesn't,
That'd be a next year's
Take-
budget item if we're going to go forward.
Correct.
Right.
There would be no construction dollars in fiscal year
Right.
23.
No, you had it down for 24, right?
No, and I know that,
Yeah.
I was just bringing it up for conversation because we've all
No, I'm
heard
glad you
from
did.
people that don't want it. And it's fairly persistent, so if anybody felt like we really didn't want to go forward with it, there's no reason to budget 15 for a design if somebody had changed their mind. So I guess I just want to clarify then that the design is for, maybe somewhere and I missed over it, but is the design then for Timberline, Hidden Valley, and then down Pleasant Ridge, the
Yes.
whole U?
Mhm.
Okay, just as long as we get something for all of it. We have something to look at for all of it, then we can decide if we're gonna piece it out, I guess.
And certainly the council, and this has happened in the past, includes the $15,000 in the budget. It's coming out of local option sales tax, and decides later not to proceed with it, even after the budget does. So the dollars are still going to be in local option sales tax.
Yeah.
It's not like we're collecting and levying property
I'm aware of
tax
it.
dollars.
That's why I asked now. I didn't know if this is the time to ask
No,
about it.
I think it's good. consistently brought things up for discussion as we do our, but that's a part of having a budget workshop.
Yeah.
I think Kyle is correct that Feeder Street, we should continue it over. It may cost more than the 15,000. Would you guess, Randy? How much?
Not too much,
Not,
not much, too much more than 15,000.
not
It'd
to
be
even extend
relatively-
it down to,
yeah.
what's it called again, Kyle?
Prairie View.
Prairie View.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense because that is,
Yep. And there is a section of sidewalk right here. It stops right there.
yeah, I forget.
Yeah, you can see the sidewalk there.
Yeah.
So it stops right there.
I think that's.
Now, there's gonna be some challenges right there, but
What?
a major fiber optic box,
Of course,
A major what?
fiber optic
of course.
box.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Western Iowa Network's entire node is right there.
And they,
This doesn't show what we have done this year, does it, down our Timberline?
No,
Okay.
that was it.
okay.
I don't-
Okay, enough on that?
Yep, nope, that's good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
No, thank you. Thanks for bringing the question up, Misty. It was on my list of questions and I didn't know when to ask, so thanks for doing it for me. Randy, you want to continue?
yes, you bet. The next area in the capital projects is the Corridor of Commerce.
Okay.
And what is proposed in this budget for
Can
Corridor
we-
of Commerce?
Can I
Yes.
interject quick? Sorry. Can we go back to the last section and talk a little bit about Adams Street?
Yeah, I was
Or are you
going
gonna
to
do that
jump over
later?
and then back.
Okay, let's do that. That's fine.
I was going to try to get through this part and then to
Perfect.
get into Adams Street just a little bit deeper.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
But anyway, the Corridor of Commerce, all that's proposed in this next fiscal year is kind of the completion of the original design work on the 11th phase that was originally planned. That some of the design work is complete. The 11th phase is actually from Highway 71 to West Street on Highway 30, and then on Highway 30 from Clark Street to Grant Road. So it's the two outlying areas of Highway 30. And that's called Phase 11. Part of the design work is completed. This budget proposes completing the rest of the design work on that section. And then in the capital improvement program, it is programmed for construction in 2024, I believe. So not a lot in this budget, but that's what is included in it. So, and then the last part of this capital projects portion of the budget is the street maintenance facility. And it is projected in this budget to be completed in the current fiscal year. So there is really nothing in the next fiscal year proposed at this point.
I will raise a question about Phase 11. So the 25,000 is for design work only,
Mhm.
right? And then, but page 29 shows for fiscal year 24, a 1.6 million. Would that be estimated for what that work would cost?
Correct.
Well, I'll just say it right now. I'd like that to go to Adams Street. But is this point of embarkation for that too?
Yep. It would be.
You know, to me, I'm just one, and you guys are the ones calling the shots as far as how we're spending the money. But I think there are other projects better suited for that, and I'll let it go at that.
That is a segue into what I was going to mention next, Mr. Mayor.
Ta-da-da.
On your page 30, which is part of the capital improvement program, there are a series of street projects. And just for your information, to kind of explain it, The top one on that page is street resurfacing of 2024. The way that the street projects are set up in the capital improvement program, they run in cycles. We've got reconstruction, restoration, and resurfacing. Each one's a different type of project, and so they're rotated through the years. And some of your earlier bonding work indicated a reconstruction project every 3 years. Of course, they're the largest of the projects. So they've been incorporated into this capital improvement program. Then in the intervening years, either a restoration or a resurfacing project. That's a long way around to say the top project on that page is a street resurfacing of 2024. But the project that follows that is a CBD street resurfacing project. Now, the street resurfacing project for 2024 is general capital maintenance type project, funded, proposed to be funded, pretty much as much of the street resurfacing has been funded. Local option sales tax, road use tax, and then in this case, electric franchise tax. Now, or electric franchise fee. Now, the next project, Cbd Street Resurfacing, is proposed to be funded through tax increment financing. And that's limited to all of the streets in the central business district. We did this a few years ago on Court Street, where we had completed the streetscape project, then came in and did the center as a road project. And it turns out pretty nice. You know, you get the streetscape project does the curbs and some of the parking and the sidewalk and all that. Then you finish off the project with a street repair or capital maintenance. So that's proposed. Now, the reason I'm talking about at the same time is they're the same type of project. They're overlay projects. So it would make sense to do them both in the same year. So here's a capital improvement plan proposal to expend that tax increment financing in this tax increment area, the central business district. One step farther, the two projects beyond that one on this list is the US 30 signal replacement. Your traffic signals on US 30, with the exception of kind of the newer ones, Highway 71, Quint was, these right through downtown were installed in 1976. And they have served very well. The controllers have been replaced from mechanical controllers to electric controllers to electronic controllers, and now you can't buy any of those three. So the last one that was destroyed, we had to buy an upscale controller and dumb it down so that it would work in the system, which we did at great expense. So it's time to replace the controller, at a minimum, the controller part of the signals. So because they are also in the urban renewal area, tax increment financing is proposed to replace those. So the reason I bring it to your attention is that this is a plan for expenditure of the tax increment financing in the central business district for items that are really capital maintenance and really needed. You know, street surfacing, traffic signal replacement, that type of stuff. And they're programmed through 2026, through fiscal year 26. And that's kind of on a pay-as-you-go deal, like we've done the entire streetscape. So that's a long response to.
No, that's a good response. And again, I just suggested Adams Street. I mean, there's 6 or 7 other high priority streets that are further on down the road. And, you know, you can remember my comments, you know, from opening night, you know, that when we had Corridor 2.0, you know, in the plan, you know, everybody knows how I feel about it. And again, it's for your discussion and dialogue and debate. But, you know, my suggestion is, you know, I'm interested in uncorridoring and putting that money back into the streets where it belongs.
And let me interject a little bit with kind of reiterate what Randy said, just maybe say slightly in a different way. I think with the capital improvement plan we have, I mean, certainly making a decision not to do additional corridor commerce work is certainly a decision for the council to make. Those dollars that are generated in the tax increment financing district are within the central. I mean, they're being paid for by the taxpayers in that district. And I think what Randy is trying to suggest, and what I would support with Randy, is to suggest we should take those dollars and invest them in the area that the taxpayers are paying.
Mm-hmm.
So, certainly reallocating them away from corridor commerce can happen, but should we put it against Adams Street, benefiting property owners that didn't pay that tax, or should we do it in the central business district where those property owners pay that tax?
Yeah, and I only use that as an example. I mean, it probably makes better sense in what he's suggesting. So anyways, Carolyn?
Corridor 2.0 is not, there would be some beautification, as I said before, but that's not the main focus. It's not a continuation of streetscape.
Right.
And when it's about, as I said it before, because so many people work there, and you look at the data and you see the average the average year the businesses were built, 1933. You see the degradation of the parking lots and the entryways and the lack of a frontage road. It's about those things. It's not just continuing doing streetscape. It's not about streetscape. And when you see that how many thousands work along the corridor, Mike? Do you remember? I was going through the data. Thousands of people. And so it's about those things. It's not a continuation. Everybody should scan through that, and it's very easy to read. Not a lot of narrative, but bullet points, photos, aerials. So,
maybe they should relabel it.
see, that's what I think, that I think it's another streetscape thing.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Yeah, that's the
Did
common.
all of you get copies
Oh,
of
yeah,
that?
yeah. And it's on the website too.
Yeah, yeah.
Very.
And I would even kind of take it a little bit further. Even the streetscape phase 11 of the original streetscape is really a different approach even at that. There's not the decorative lighting that you see in downtown today. They're a cobra head, so kind of more standard what you see in other areas of town. And then it's a lot of sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
It's about that pedestrian foot traffic. And when we did the Corridor Commerce 2.0 work, we walked the entire corridor from the rec center to Fairway to Hy-Vee and back to the rec center. And it was the coldest day of that year, I believe.
It wasn't quite as bad as today.
Wasn't bad as today, but it was bad. And it just snowed. And the one thing I think everyone I was surprised because it snowed that morning and we went out at 10 o'clock, how much foot traffic was going through snow. And it really, I think everyone walked out of that discussion saying, well, we have a lot of pedestrians on the corridor. And I think that was surprising. At least to me, it was very surprising.
Over the years, I've gotten so many emails of people who live near the downtown area. They want some way to walk safely to Walmart. We followed a path when we all walked, and Randy, you were on it too. And the path from the trailer park out there was phenomenal. All the people that were walking to downtown. And the RDG, their emphasis was so much on pedestrian safety and access to businesses.
$1.6 million is a lot of sidewalks.
Well, when you look at the cost of 3 city blocks at $160,000 on Pleasant Ridge and Hidden Valley and Timberline, I mean, you're talking about a lot more length of sidewalks and a lot of complexity of trying to get sidewalk through some pretty tight areas in the corridor.
Could that not be perhaps a trails discussion?
It certainly can be a trails discussion. Part of it is it's about funding sources too.
Yeah.
And do you want, TIF has a little bit more power of just how the funding and how that works, and where we're getting the funding sources, versus if you use the local option sales tax or hotel motel like we typically do with trails. It's just city dollars versus with tax increment financing, you're talking about city, county, school dollars that are trying to improve the economic vitality of an area to raise property values so that all taxing entities long-term have more value. And the hope is lower property taxes in the end. So it's all about how you want to tackle the funding sources.
And when the tips come off, it's also so good because then we've gained
Taxable valuation.
taxable valuation. And so that enhances what we're able to capture with property taxes. And in a commercial area, they're taxed at the highest rate of 90%. So once you add value to that property, like you will with this corridor of commerce, it will enhance, and down the road, thinking long term, it will actually add, to our tax coffers by improving the value of the properties.
And maybe an approach is just so everyone has a better understanding, because maybe there's a discussion about, well, we want to do parts of what's in the corridor of Commerce Phase 11, but maybe not other parts. Maybe we look at scheduling a workshop with Jim Host from Confluence and kind of review what the scope is today, and if we need to retool the scope, or even, if we're going to say no, maybe even understand what we're saying no to, and then we can make a good decision at that point. Maybe that's an approach.
I got a question here, Mark. On this phase 11, are you saying don't do it forever? The 1.6 million, just don't, or never do it again? That's my question.
Yes,
Just be done with it.
yeah, I just think that that's money better well off for a long-term street plan. Just my thoughts.
I will tell you, the streetscape downtown, we had to adjust it a bit for the new bank building commercial. We adjusted a bit so they have better parking. I mean, I think Mike's idea of having a little workshop might be a good idea to rethink things. And the streetscape where Reese's now is doing that big renovation where all the little buildings are. People who did businesses and all those little shops and so on told me they just loved it because they felt like it really enhanced the block they were on, and with the brickwork, the black railing and the plantings and so on. So the businesses in that area anyway, several of the people in those businesses told me they just loved when that was done on the corner of 30 and, God, I can't remember the street, but they felt it enhanced the what do you call it, the street view of their businesses.
I don't remember ever taking TIF money and spending it out of the TIF district. Have you done that? That concerns me a little bit.
Well, you can only spend TIF dollars in the urban renewal area. Now, the council did take action and did expand the urban renewal district at the end, towards the end of last year, and they did expand. They brought in what would be the corridor of commerce 2.0 areas. They brought in railroad corridor. They brought in part of Adams Street. There was a fourth
Part of
area.
Adams Street, so how far on Adams?
What? Oh, the villa, correct. All the way to 13th Street.
Okay.
Yeah. the balancing act is, again, the council always has the authority to expand an urban renewal area and expend TIF dollars in that expanded area. The balancing act that the council has to ask is, again, those dollars are being generated by certain property owners. What's the justification of spending it to really benefit other property owners? But the council has the authority to do that. And I think in all of these discussions, and I think the items that Randy brought up, we know that there's more needs throughout the community than really there's ever going to be dollars. So then it's up to the council to kind of prioritize how to expend those dollars.
And in that spirit, I mean, you made a very compelling, we're going to talk about assessments here a little bit, but you made a very compelling, argument. We've got to figure out ways of long-term funding these major street reconstructions, which we know are going to happen. And, my only, is this isn't about what's been done. This conversation isn't about what's been done. I'm just referring to, we've invested $14.5 million on corridoring. And would that, as we move forward, wouldn't that be money wiser spent on street reconstruction?
At the same time, though, too, you have to look at continuing the corridor to a certain point, because you have a piece of the middle of the business district that looks very nice and functions very nice, and then you get outside of what's done, and it's not as appealing, and the values aren't probably as great as they could be. So, when you go past a certain area, that it would be nice to see some of those incoming businesses from both angles to be a little more valuable. I mean, because actually taxable value is what we're after, and good traffic flow from pedestrians, and you know what I mean? I mean, you want both. We know we need to take care of our roads, but we also know we need to look good, feel good, run good in order to have additional people want to continue to keep coming in and, coming in to work or coming in to stay. So it's a good mix of both.
Randy, how many more? We got 12 is the last one?
11 is the last one currently
This is the
scheduled.
last one.
Mhm.
So I think it's a matter of re-looking at it and really deciding if, how much of it, understanding exactly what's happening and how much of it maybe do we want to really think about going forward with, or what could we take out, and then, yeah.
I just had way too many people in my ear. We don't have $4.5 million to do a major thoroughfare in the street, but yet we've got $1.6 million to do corridoring. And that's all I've got left to say. So many people telling me that. It's the vibe.
I would say we need to balance needs, Mark. And I think Misty hit on the right note that people expect good streets, safe streets, etc. But are we going to sell Carroll? Like, we have great streets,
I know, it's not sexy. It's not.
And there are some real dilapidated areas. In fact, there were some things I didn't know existed behind off the corridor. And RDG came up with some little sketches, and not to tell people what to do. They were not at all about telling people what to do with their private property, but they said, there are some parking lots that are falling apart, and and maybe down the road, if you ever, think about how different parts of the corridor could develop to get us up to speed, like mixed use, where you have commercial down below. And I know a lot of cities, then they have really cool condos and stuff up above. And, so they had us revisioning what Carroll could be to keep us vibrant. So things have to be going on in a town to attract people, or you lose your energy. And talking about a vibe, people know when nothing's going on, and they'll go by all our nice streets and say, what nice streets. But man, out east, there are a lot of things that should be done once we get past, the main downtown. And I know up in Dickinson County, they started a few years ago, and they're starting with the lighting. They are starting a beautification of Highway 71, that corridor. And there's constantly, you just see little improvements, and people get the feeling, and we see that happening down in Coon Rapids and Manning and Breda, all over, just small improvements. That's a springboard for somebody else to do something else and to continue improvement. It's not going to happen overnight, but we need to do some of the things that, Misty brought up in order to attract businesses, to attract people, we need workers. So I think we can keep all the balls in the air. And I think we need to think long-term, what will bring people to our area? And if we're not investing in Carroll, who will? That's where I'm at. But we can decide how much we want to spend or what we want to do.
Well, aren't we at the same place where we were with the sidewalk? Do we want to put the $25,000 in the budget and move forward and talk about this at a work session or something?
I would suggest that we schedule a work session with Confluence, and just have them come in and overview.
Where's this 25? Is it lost money?
No, this is TIF.
Water.
It's also like TIF. It's a loan through
Water utility fund and TIF, I see.
Yes.
Okay. So our question tonight is, do we put it in the budget and talk about this later, or just take it out of the budget now? Is what we're at.
Ultimately, that's where
I'm for just put it in the budget, and if we get to a workshop and we decide no, then that money's there. I mean, we got a long night ahead of us yet here. I mean, we should have, if we're gonna do this, let's talk about it on a workshop, not on a long budget meeting.
Yeah, and these dollars they're going to come in through TIF regardless of what we do with the budget.
Right.
Because we took a loan out, so the dollars are going to be sitting there.
Okay.
There's even if you take it out, it's not like we can go back and stop those funds from coming in. They're going to come in.
Okay.
Very well.
At least in fiscal year 23, they're going to come in.
Okay, it had been mentioned a couple of times, the Adams Street project, just before we get away from street discussions. Of course, you've had a workshop on assessment, and actually, the Adams Street project was placed on a accelerated schedule to get it let, timely. The assessment part of the discussion, it was slow down the project schedule. But so those decisions, you need to refresh your memory on them, and they will need to be made, not tonight, but we just want to impress upon you that the assessment part of that schedule is the part that will control the schedule at this point. And once, there's several decisions to be made. You've been presented with a few different scenarios that involve different levels of special assessment and no special assessment. This budget does not include any special assessment dollars. It funds the entire project from dollars in the budget, at least at the current estimated cost. If you want to establish that policy for future reconstruction projects that includes a special assessment, that's something that certainly can be done in this kind of the initial reconstruction project. But that's, I guess we didn't want to get too far in the weeds tonight, but really want to impress that these decisions will need to come quickly, and certainly the workshops, the council meeting schedules will be presented for your deliberation, I guess, on that.
And let me interject too, to also add, there is, council has an option of saying, we're going to do special assessments on the roadway. Or we're going to do special assessments for those private utility and sidewalk improvements. Which that private utility and sidewalks, those are going to be owner responsibility. They're responsible for their services, for the sidewalks, for driveways beyond the project needs. So the question is, do you want to offer up to say, we'll do a special assessment, we'll basically bankroll it as a city, and then you're going to pay for it back on your property taxes. It doesn't matter if you say we're going to do roadway special assessments or we're going to allow these private improvement special assessments. Likely either one of those is going to say we're going to need to not do Adams Street in calendar year 22. Just with where we're at timing wise and in the legwork that it's going to take, we would probably need to push the project back. So I just want to lay that out there. So I think maybe a basic question would be is, will the council, not committing to roadway at all, but would the council want to offer private property owners the option to do special assessments for those private infrastructure items? Because if they do, then I think the staff recommendation would be we need to not plan to do Adams Street in calendar year 22.
Okay,
That
so
makes sense.
the clarification question would be, even if the council wishes to offer special assessments for their private uses, that would still delay the project, is what I'm hearing. It'll delay the Adams Street project, even if we do the optional assessments. I'll call them optional assessments.
And people are able to pick and choose if you do optional assessments for driveways, sewers. It's not everybody, it's individual property
So
owners.
I think there's some policy decisions that need to be made. I mean, I don't know if you want to expand on it or if you want me to do it.
I can, I know of some, and to the question on the option, that really will be a policy decision. There's the possibility out there that a homeowner may have an Orangeburg sewer.
Right.
Should be replaced. Well, the homeowner may say, it's working, I'm not going to replace it. I don't want to do that. I want to spend the money. Well, should the city say, this is a case where you have to replace it? Did you want to get that far into it? Because it's in the best interest of that roadway to not have it opened up right after it's paved. So those are tough decisions. I mean, they're difficult. They shouldn't have to be made. An Orangeburg sewer should be replaced. And most people will probably do that. But there will be, in all practicality, there could be a homeowner or more than one that just says, I don't want to spend money now. So do you leave the Orangeburg sewer in place and then have the road torn up in a few years when it collapses?
And even take the Orangeburg just a step further. I mean, to replace it during construction, that homeowner's not going to have the cost of the roadway itself. Where if we wait and say, okay, even 5 years from now it has to be replaced, now you're digging down, replacing it, and you're going to pay for that roadway. So I mean, there's the logical question of why would we allow something that we know is failing, is not good in our environment, to continue to exist under a new roadway, and then they're going to create areas that road will never perform like it would if we just do it right from the get-go. Because again, when you dig down, you're gonna have trench collapse. You could have the potential that you undermine the roadway that you don't dig up at that point. We're opening up to long-term issues that'll be really problematic. Those are hard decisions, because to go say, no, we're gonna make you replace this, that's difficult. But I think from staff's perspective, it isn't it's not logical to leave something that's going to fail.
Is the camera work done? Do we know where those properties exist, particularly with Orangeburg?
Yes, it was just completed last week. And we do know some Orangeburgs out there. We know that there are some services that are kind of severely cracked also, that are clay services. There's another decision, if it's still round, but if it's cracked pretty severely, how long will it be until it collapses? So those are each individual decisions, I guess, to be made. As far as whether or not it's a requirement, the option is still there to have them replaced at likely a lesser cost than the option would be if they have to remove the pavement and dig a trench and then fill it back in and replace the pavement plus the pipe work.
But also, we're going to use a geo bond on this, so they're going to be able to borrow the money from us at the same rate we are. And how long can they extend their payments?
10 years.
10 years.
Actually, I think you could go up to 15.
Up to 15.
At basically 1% is probably where we're going to get 1.25, whatever.
That, depends on when we take the debt out and.
What could be a year from now?
Yeah, the Fed's talking.
Or they can write the check right
Could be a
away.
year from now, so.
Right? They can write the check right away.
And certainly they could write the check and have no interest costs.
So if you're looking at a $10,000 bill, they could pay less than $1,000 a year. Otherwise, they're going to pay a lot more for that by digging up the cement.
Mhm.
But the biggest issue you're gonna run into is I've got sewer insurance in my house, it's $10,000. Why would I pay that versus having insurance? That's an issue that we're gonna run into.
For the insurance,
For the homeowners,
Right.
Yeah.
as far as
Doesn't cover
the
the street.
replace,
Correct, yeah.
what was that?
It covers them, but doesn't cover the street, doesn't cover.
That's the damage insurance or the
No.
replacement?
So for example, like on an insurance policy, you can get the sewer line replacement of $10,000. Well,
Okay.
I'll pay the $35 a year for that versus forking out the $10,000 or
Yeah.
$1,000 per year on an assessment. That's an issue I think we're gonna run into.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But again, I think part of what you have to balance is what's the longevity of the road? Because again, you can never replace the road to the condition that was pre-dig.
Randy, will the homeowners have access to the information from the camera work?
Mhm.
And do they have to ask for it, or will McClure share it with them, or how does that work?
Well, we will plan to invite everyone in to a resident meeting. And at that point, that information will be available for them. Like I said, we just received it last week. And so it's ready to get a resident meeting scheduled and, begin at least that discussion.
Can I ask what temperature is with the council? How do you feel about assessing the street?
I'm a no.
I'm
I feel it's the people's right to be able to do what they want with their own money. I mean, if they're gonna take the gamble and say, no, I don't wanna fix it right now.
No, I'm sorry. Just the street portion, assessing the property. How do you feel about the property owners being charged an assessment on just the street reconstruction?
They should. That's part of our civil duties, to take care of those guys and pay taxes.
I feel like the people that are gonna be for it are the ones that don't live on that street. It's not affecting them right now.
Okay.
Until it comes down their road and affects them, that's when they're gonna be against it. So, that's where we're at.
There are different mixes too, if I remember right, like the percentage that, and I can't remember, there was one kind of in the middle that seemed pretty fair. I can't remember what the percent was, like.
Ultimately, if the council is going to do a roadway assessment, you have to develop a policy yet of what that mix would look like. And the council has great discretion as long as you don't exceed the valuation, the property valuation question on what those percentages would be. I think from staff's perspective, when we presented the discussion on assessments, is we know there is not enough tax dollars to keep up and maintain the roadway today. I know and I understand and respect the decision or discussion that property taxes should take care of all the maintenance. And in a utopia world that works. But again, we could stop doing all city services. And at our current tax rate, it would take us like 90 years to replace all of our roads. And no one believes a road should last 90 years. And yet we still want police, fire, parks, and snow removal, and all those other services that we expect. And so, unless we're going to say, let's triple our property taxes, there just isn't enough dollars to maintain the roadway system. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. Agree, Randy?
Sure.
I would say in a lot of other towns, though, they're doing special assessments.
They are doing
So, I
special
mean,
assessments.
If we don't do it, we're a little abnormal. I mean,
Well, we'd be falling behind. It would speed up getting more street work done, help us hold down property taxes. But I think we're doing a reasonable amount, not putting a big burden. And I can't remember the breakdown, like I'd have to dig up.
I'm not exactly sure where I'm at either. I need some more information. Because I agree, I would not want to have to see that road reopened again. I mean, there's something to be said about when the concrete's done and the process is done, not having to rip that back open, and why would you want to? I think it's just a matter of figuring out the policy of what are we going to force and what are we not, and how far do we go with it, and what part of it do we, do they get a chance to get money at our low rate, or do we not offer that and they just have to pay for it? I mean, there's a lot of different things to talk about yet, I feel like.
And to add to the confusion, the next step is based on the televising, there's a possibility that the entire main sanitary sewer should be replaced. In the case that it's replaced, of course, that would be expected to be a city cost, but then you want to replace every lateral. And who pays for that? Is that one of the private special assessments to replace every lateral? If you're going to replace the main, which is 100 years plus old, then the laterals are also 100 years plus old. Should they be replaced in total under the street?
If we know that information already, why wouldn't we do it in the first place?
Do
Replace the main instead of reopen it again down the road.
we're looking into that right now based on the televising. And the question is one step farther, is to the laterals. If you do replace the main, the laterals typically should be replaced also.
That's not in your $2 million estimate you have here either.
No, it's not.
Any idea what that would be?
No, not at this point. There is some consideration for it in that total estimated cost of the project, but it wasn't complete. And then there's water main. Water main's 100 years old plus too. And then there are water services that are 100 years old. So this thing snowballs, and these are the decisions we keep referring to. They're difficult decisions, and they take time to get, I'm sure. But they're all there. I mean, they have to be made in order for this project to move forward.
And we have to make the decisions by February.
I was gonna say,
Well,
I think we need these numbers pretty quick.
we had this project originally was scheduled, no consideration for special assessment. to be let at the end of February. And so technically it can be done practically on that schedule. But there is so much to be decided before that can occur. A lot of it surrounding special assessment. Of course, with the receipt of the televising information, the decisions on those replacements, certainly both storm sewer and sanitary sewer, a lot of them to make.
Do you kind of feel like we should wait a little bit? I feel like there's a lot yet.
There,
If you're just getting some information now,
yeah, you know, we would be pretty much on schedule if those decisions were made. Now, as far as replacement of the sanitary sewer main, those can be made quickly. You know, the evaluation of the information, and we would propose a professional recommendation for replacement or not replacement. Not that difficult. The difficulty that I see is, okay, we're going to do the main, now we're going to do the services. But you, the homeowner, have to pay for them, or you decide that the city's going to pay for them. Those are the decisions I would suggest that are going to be more difficult. They're the more political decisions. You know, an evaluation of sanitary sewer, fairly straightforward. There's alternates, and they'll be considered, proposed to you. Those I don't see as being huge stumbling blocks. They're costly, you know, unbelievably costly, but not that bad as far as the decision is concerned. But when you start factoring in, you know, the impact of people paying for sanitary sewer laterals or water service lines, those are difficult. I mean, they're policy decisions.
What's the council's wishes?
We got to see a bunch of numbers.
Numbers,
What's our number options?
Sewer line, water line.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
the dollar cost of those options.
And what would be the impact if we decided to do the special assessments or not? I'm kind of a numbers guy. I kind of like to see numbers before I make decisions.
Okay.
And I think the residents need to know what the impact would be on them too, instead of guess. And
Well-
then that comes into the situation, we've got to know in 4 weeks. It's going to be tough to get that information to the residents, and then it's going to be real hard to make that timeline.
And the whole discussion on special assessments is if the decisions to do special assessments on the roadway, then the project's delayed.
I get that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty tough to make decisions without some concrete numbers too.
And at this point, those numbers will be estimates.
Yes.
You know, that's the other thing. We don't want to get a lot of false sense of security on it. You know, the numbers are the bid numbers. Those are the actual ones. Can estimate it as close as practical, but they're not cast in stone. You know, that's the downside to it.
And I think the other thing with the environment we're in right now, inflationary impacts are so wild that until you get the bid numbers, really they are just estimates right now.
my personal opinion is kind of leaning towards, because I feel like this is all snowballed really fast. And I know we've had a lot of conversations about it, but the special assessment thing didn't really come up until not that long ago, that we've actually had time to talk about it and have people in the community hear about it. And now they're talking about it. I mean, is the way to go, because I'm hearing we need to get this done because of inflationary and whatnot. But if you want to do special assessments, we're going to have to put it off. Maybe we just get Adams done and we make sure that we start talking about this a lot sooner for our next full construction as far as assessments go. And people in the community have a lot more time to think about how that affects them and if that's the way we're gonna go, because I think we had decided that assessments is kind of the way to pay for it in the long haul, to get us set up on a good plan. But it all came up so fast.
The thing I struggle with a little bit is we're doing Adams Street and the value of those homes or so, but if we go 3 or 4 blocks to a different direction, the value of those homes are a lot less or could be a lot more. Well, the cost of doing this work is the same regardless what the value of your home is. So if you got a lower dollar home, that's a huge impact on that person compared to somebody that can afford it. That's where I struggle with special assessments. And one of the other things that when we had this presentation that I got out of it is if your amount that you can borrow, which we are very low, we can borrow this money and still be no problem in our status. But if you're at the top end and you want to do this project and you don't have enough money to borrow without asking the public for special assessments, that's a whole nother story, but we're not there at all. We didn't do special assessments on 3rd Street. We haven't done anything for a long time.
70 years, the way I understood it.
Yeah,
The last time we did any special assessment.
We've done them sooner. I mean,
The little bit that's come to me is-
some since you've been here, so.
A little bit that's come to me is let's share the bill with
Yeah.
the citizens of the town.
Bella Vista?
Pardon?
Bella Vista? Or was it Plaza Drive? It was one of those over there. That they were repaying it when I first started.
Oh, I understood. I thought I heard once that it was.
We've done a lot of special assessments. It's historically like some of the core area when we went from gravel to paved, correct?
The city did a lot of special assessments in the 60s and
Oh,
70s.
so I can
early
upgrade.
70s.
Oh, I see that.
Seal-coated streets that they paved, and that was all done by special assessment. Later, there have been on and off a few different special assessments. There was a subdivision where the developer wanted to be assessed for the cost of his improvements.
Oh, yeah, I
And then
get
he
that.
paid it off over a period of time. And what actually happened with that one, interest rates went down. He paid it off within a few years because he could borrow the money cheaper elsewhere.
Mhm.
At the time, I think he was being charged about the maximum rate under the law, but that was all agreed to. And so it's been used in different ways throughout the history of the city. Nothing consistent since those 60s and early 70s projects.
So, okay. We are at the point where we got to give Randy some direction here. Do we want to take this up as an agenda item between now and the end of February? So we can invite the Adams Street residents here once again and have a public discussion with them so they know what we're considering? Because if I'm hearing it right, no one has said, we're not going to do it. Everybody is still open to it. Am I hearing that correct? Okay. So that's as much direction as we can offer you, sir.
Okay. We'll pull together some more information, probably get a resident meeting, invitations out to a resident meeting.
Okay.
And
Can that be done relatively in the next couple of weeks? Is that unrealistic?
probably not. I mean, it probably can be if that's your desire.
And this is a direct letter sent to these residents that they'll have
That would be my
service.
suggestion, that
Okay.
they'll have, well, the direct letter would probably be the invitation to a meeting. Mhm.
And typically, do you want to talk about how we handle resident meetings? Just for everyone's education.
Generally, they haven't been at council meetings. You know, they're separate from those. On another night, We like to have the preliminary plan laid out so everyone can see their house, see what impact there's going to be on their property, whether it be, sidewalk, driveway. And then, of course, in this project, we would have the information on the facilities, the water service information, the sewer service information for them. And then it's mostly just informal discussion is what we have generally done. A little bit of formal presentation, but mostly just standing and pointing and talking at a property. I mean, that's what the property owner's concerned with. That's their interest, and that's what we want to provide to them. So that's kind of the way we've handled them in the recent past.
So it's a lot of one-on-one discussions about how it impacts, and it works really well. We do send invitations to the council, so you'll get notice of it also. So if you want to be part of those discussions, you can be. Generally, council members don't always show up, which is fine.
And before we invite the public in, we're gonna have the final numbers on the sewer line, water line
Estimates.
Estimates.
And then make a decision if we're even interested in doing an assessment or final assessment or any assessment at all before we invite them in. Is that correct?
We can. Yeah, if that's the way you,
I guess I would hate to see we invite them in, talk to them about special assessments, raise everybody's blood pressure because that's what's going to happen, and then it doesn't happen at all.
No, I think we're at a point where we're just talking about the project. We wouldn't necessarily get into financing discussions. Those are, if we decide to do special assessments, those will be down the road.
Oh, so that wouldn't take place at the residential meeting? To the residents meeting?
I wouldn't suspect it would at this juncture.
Then I would hold off until we got the numbers.
Mhm.
I wouldn't even invite the residents until we got the numbers.
That's exactly what
total-
they're gonna wanna know when they come.
Yeah,
to this meeting.
I don't know what they're gonna want to know.
I'd wait till you got the numbers.
Yeah.
Who would, Cody or someone from McClure, who would come up with the numbers?
Well, I mean, again, those are,
Their estimates. I know.
so I mean, you have estimates of what the project's going to cost. Then the council if you're going to consider special assessments, then the council needs to work on developing a policy on what you're going to assess.
What you're gonna offer the residents.
Yeah,
That's
because
another meeting.
the there's a whole spectrum of what you could do. I mean, McClure put out some estimates or put out some sample assessments on what could happen, but the council could do anything from 0 to 100% and anything in between. So there's a lot of policy. I mean, ultimately the council's gonna have to make policy decisions on where you're gonna want to proceed. It's not a staff saying, here's numbers. It's the council's gonna have to say, yes, we want to do special assessments and this is the percentage we want. We can help give you some guidance, but those are gonna be policy decisions the council will have to make ultimately.
And I think we need to make those before we even bring in the public. In my opinion, I'm with Kyle.
So that's not something that's gonna happen in a couple of weeks.
Right.
And that's gonna take time.
So we're really looking at pushing this down a year.
Or not doing special assessments and just doing it.
And I would say if you make that decision, it's gonna be really hard 3 years from now to say we're gonna do special assessments. You're
On the
setting
next one.
the long-term precedence
I mean,
because
I guess, but we
you're gonna-
haven't done any for quite some time. What difference does it make if we do it today or we do it 3 years from now?
Because every neighbor that does it 3 years from now is gonna say, well, Adams Street didn't have to have it.
I know,
And
but
it's
didn't they
kinda
say that
out
about
there,
Third Street?
too.
What?
But wouldn't they say that about Third Street?
Well, Third Street was a little different because what promulgated it was a sewer project.
I follow you. I understand what you're saying. But
I think the
mean,
special assessment's been talked about from the beginning. You eliminate it on this project and then put it in place afterwards, then you have an issue. I think before we move forward with it, we're gonna decide if we're gonna have special assessments or not have special assessments. Because I'm with you too, Mike. I live around the corner. You just replaced everything for him for nothing, and now I'm getting charged. So,
Or you lived on Adams Street and you paid for it and you moved to another street and you got it done again.
yes, yes.
If I have a special assessment, I'd never move it again. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, we wanna go home yet tonight, but I would just add that I don't wanna say this is kicking the can down the road, but 3 years from now, there could be an entirely different council, entirely different mayor, entirely different leadership. I mean, if we set a precedence, we're not exactly setting up future councils necessarily, or are we? You know, I mean, well, they did it, they didn't do it. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's.
You certainly don't bind future councils
You
by current
can't.
decisions, but when you set a precedent like this, it becomes a pretty major impact.
I would agree in large part, but it's also not set in stone either, you know, so to your point, it could be done later, you know.
I just fear pushing the whole project down the road and having it be a whole lot more a year from now.
Right.
That's my big gripe right now.
But somewhat though, if we don't do this one, we're doing another one. So, so if we do this one, then the other one will be more expensive too. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't affect your budget a whole lot. It's just
Right.
labels and such.
Yeah,
Okay.
this budget proposal actually has both projects in
Right.
it. One may be done and the other wouldn't. So,
Okay.
and then, of course, the anticipation may be that the other project is done next year.
Okay. To that point, anything else?
On capital projects?
Period.
Well, you've got a water utility, sewer
We got all
utility,
those to
and
go yet,
storm
too.
utility that are the remaining areas of the public works budget.
So I would say it's 8:30. So my suggestion is we break here for the night and we start up on these next Monday, if that's acceptable.
You
Next-
were a good hire.
Next Monday, we're a
Monday
little,
with the council
Yeah,
meeting
with
coming up
Monday.
that Monday,
Yeah.
Oh,
or
that's a
the
good
budget
You
work
got
session.
you got a week from Monday.
we could do it. I was thinking 2 weeks from now, but we have a very light council meeting.
We could finish him up Monday.
So why don't we plan to do that on next Monday? We'll have this as a workshop.
Great idea.
And then get back on track for the 31st.
Laura apparently was a great hire because she,
I thought I just whispered that to you.
You both
didn't
were.
hear me.
You both were.
so good idea, Laura.
Okay. Yeah. We're at that eyes glazed over point.
We are.
Okay, need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Is there a motion to
I'll make a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
I'll
Good
second.
call. Okay.
Carroll. Yes, all right, was that?
To do adjourn, yes.
Yes.
Kyle.
Yes.
Vern. Yes, JJ, Misty, Tom. To adjourn?
Yes.
We are adjourned.